Good day everyone, welcome to this video, and today we have another one of my guide videos, and today we have a guide on at least how I play interceptors and air defense fighters. Now, these aircraft are actually sometimes quite hard to detect for some people. They tend to struggle of what it may mean or like what aircraft fit into this category, and it's all a matter of looking at the aircraft's stat card. As I mentioned or as I'm going to soon mention in the strike aircraft advice video, that is something that you're going to need to look at. If you're not sure what an aircraft is classified as, look at the vehicle stat card. This will indicate what the aircraft is designated as and its potential role in the game. So let's look at my P-61, for example, which is the aircraft you're going to see today. This is classified as an air defense fighter, so it gets a higher altitude spawn than the Interceptors, but generally these are quite heavier aircraft because the P-61 is quite a bit of a chunky boy, but it does climb pretty well to compensate for that, as it has two very powerful engines. Now, of course, all of the air defense fighters in the game will have a decent climb rate for the most part. There are some exceptions, but I'm not going to cover those today. But this general playstyle that I'm going to showcase for you will apply to the majority of air defense fighters and interceptors. Now I know what some people are gonna say. The majority, like, they're gonna have in that mindset, like they're gonna have like, how can I describe it? Like they're gonna be thinking, well, surely they're air defense fighters and they're interceptors. Go after bombers 24/7. That's incorrect. That's how you cost your team a match sometimes, because half the time you may die to that bomber because you're not necessarily gonna gut the bomber in one pass unless you're using something like a P-61. And even then, the bomber can still shoot back whilst you're shooting at it, and it can still kill you. Going for bombers is a controversial topic in itself, and I am going to potentially cover this in a future video of a what not to do, because that's another thing I'm working on. Um, and as a result, this is something you're just going to have to think about. Is it wise for me to go for this bomber? Is it wise for me to engage this ME-264 from behind when it's got three cannons looking at me? You just have to read the situation and think about it. If you have no choice, if he's the last guy, then by all means do it. But if you're 5 minutes into a match, you spot a 264 and you tail sit it, is that really helping your team? Yes, you may kill the 264, but it's a high chance the 264 will be killing you as well. Interceptors such as this XP50 are to be flown exactly the same way. Both of these aircraft, for the most part, can support their team much better. And of course, we all know what the XP50 can do. This thing has been spammed to ever living shit nowadays because they made it available in the Battle Pass War Bonds, and I've seen at most 7 of these on one team, and it wasn't even funny. Let's put it that way. But all of these interceptors slash air defense fighters can be flown the same way, and whilst some of the things will require a bit of knowledge and a bit of head-on knowledge as well, because sometimes you might have to take an head-on. It's just how the game goes sometimes. You will have to learn about your head-ons. If you want me to cover head-ons in a video, do let me know and I will. But for the most part, this is definitely something that you're going to need to practice over time. But I'll showcase a good example of how I do head-ons at least in this replay. But as previously mentioned, we're not using the XP50 for this example, otherwise that would just be one kill and then the entire other XP50s on my team would probably just clean up everything else. I chose the P-61 for this example. So let's go take a look, and let's go learn how I play interceptors and air defense fighters, and of course I'll give you tips and tricks along the way to help you out with you playing them yourself. Of course, I do take quite a bit of risk in this battle, so the amount of risk that you should take should be lessened, so to speak, because at the end of the day, it may be your first or one of your first experiences in these aircraft. You may not necessarily know what these aircraft can do, and as a result, it's definitely something that you're going to have to learn over time. So starting off, I tend to climb at 15 to 20 degrees depending on the aircraft. In an aircraft like the XP-50, that is an aircraft that can maintain 20 degrees of climb, and it can do that pretty much all day long. The Black Widow, however, the P-61, it can, but not as long, so I advise 15 degrees of climb rate for this aircraft. Now, of course, there are other examples in the other tech trees which are classed as interceptors slash air defense fighters, but the majority of tips and tricks I'm going to show you today will apply to those as well. It really depends on what your aircraft can do. Now, luckily for me, there's only 2 enemy bombers on the enemy team. One of them is carrying a torpedo for some blooming reason, and the other one is a Russian B-25. And I'll point out the most common mistake I see happening. Not yet, once the B-25 shows up. So, there's the B-25. He's just down here. And even though these two are not in interceptors slash air defense fighters, they're flying Helldivers. These are most commonly used... No, that's the wrong squad, it's this one. Sorry about that. These two are playing their SP2C4 Helldivers. And as you'll notice, they're immediately diving for the B-25, which is... I think he's just over... I'm not sure where he is. I think he's rendering wrong. Here we are. He wasn't rendering. And as a result, this is a very common thing that I see a lot of air defense fighters and interceptor pilots making. They dive for the first bomber, or they dive for the first target. This is not advised. This will most likely either get you 1 kill and then you'll be swarmed, or you may die to this bomber. These guys get away with it because they've got the gun pods, but the point still stands. You have to consider what is going to help your team in the long run. Anyway, back to the P-61. So I start off by climbing, and I don't really have a set altitude for a P-61, but I just keep climbing until I see enemy forces in my area. That tends to be how I play the P-61. This for me is at least the most comfortable. I find the P-61 to be a very nice aircraft to fly, albeit it's a little bit fragile. Now here's where I actually make a mistake. I haven't played the P-61 at this time when I was actually looking for a replay to showcase. I hadn't played it in a long time, and I forgot to use my air brakes. Hey, everyone makes mistakes, don't they? But I used the top turret to have a go at him. He does eventually bugger off for a brief moment, because he doesn't want to mess with the 50s. But that's just a little mistake I thought I'd showcase for you to have a look at. So I was initially going to go for this I-185, but he breaks off, and I decided to go for... is it Rippling Lion? Yes, it is. And he makes the fatal mistake. But watch what I do. So at 0.83 of a mile, convert that to your local distance, I'm already firing. I know I can hit him at this range. He's firing his weapons, which are... he's in a Spitfire 2B. Now his Hispano cannon can definitely hit me here. Albeit it won't be doing much damage. But it's still a point to make clear. But he's also firing his MGs. And he's going to commit to this head-on. But I'm not. Fire it first, get out of the way, blow his engine compartment to bits, and that's him done. He is not putting that fire out. He's literally become a spitting fire. There you go. I made a slight pun. That's one for Harry for you, at least. So jumping ahead, I'm obviously swinging back round at about 5 kilometers, almost 6 kilometers, to go head on with the VB-10 and the 109. But watch what I do. Same again. Around about a mile, because I know I can still hit him at this range with these cannons. Fire a burst, get out the way. He does score a minor hit, I score a crit. He misses all of his shots, 109 pulls up, 0.5 a mile. And there we go, second kill. The VB-10 you saw there, he suffered the loss of the front engine of his aircraft actually died, and he is eventually going to crash on the way back to the runway. But that's how you can turn a situation that may seem bad into your favour, as long as you have knowledge about your aircraft's firepower, when you can hit, and most importantly, when to break off in a head-on. Because sometimes head-ons are going to be your only trick, and whilst they won't always help you in a match, it's all about considering what is best for the situation. So I was initially going to go for the P-38, but then I saw that most of my team were already on his ass. He was dead anyway. So I decided to go looking for the F6F that just shot down our B-25. Unfortunately, this player is going to turn out to be a little bit of a shitbag, this F6F pilot. And there goes the VB-10 for my third kill. As previously mentioned, however, this guy is going to turn out to be a bit of a shitbag. And what I mean by that is, he's going to try and runway camp. After rearming and repairing, after dealing with the B-25, he's now the last player on his team. But luckily enough, it's not going to work for him, because as we all know, at least if you've played the P-61 at least once, you'll know this aircraft has air brakes. I think this is one of the few air interceptors and overall air defense fighters that actually have this sort of, shall we say, additional feature, is what I would say. There's also the 410s, but they're class of strike aircraft now. But there's very, very few that have the party piece of the P-61. So using my air brakes, I'm obviously wanting to both keep an eye on him and see what he's doing. And it's at this moment I spot him runway camping. So I put it in the chat and I just say to the team, go ground pound. I'll keep an eye on him. You don't have to worry about him. But he does make a mistake, which is soon going to get him killed. But as you'll notice as well, do you remember those SB2Cs at the start of the match that dove down for that B-25? One of them died pretty much doing nothing. So, yeah. You'll see how it didn't benefit them, did it? Because, at the end of the day, yes, they killed the B-25, but did it help them? No, not really. So I say to the team to farm ground targets, that should drag him out, but of course, eventually my patience runs thin, because for runway campers my patience is very thin. And using the aircraft's air brakes, throttling back to 0, I choose the moment to strike here. And he makes the fatal mistake of descending right when I'd led him into that burst. The 420mm cannons on board my P-61 blow him to smithereens. And that's kill number 4. Don't worry, I do survive the black, because Gaijin for some reason decided to let me off for this one. But I hope you enjoyed today's video on air defense fighters and interceptors. I hope this gave you some advice and tutorial, a slight bit of tips as well on how to play these aircraft, and also helped you out with your head-ons a little bit. Because at the end of the day, head-ons are sometimes something that is kind of required in the game. It's just a matter of how it develops in the match. But I hope this helped you regardless. I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video. I do have more guides on the way, so do make sure to keep an eye on that. I do have fast climbing fighters, and I do have strike aircraft on the way as well. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's video on interceptors and air defense fighters, and I will see you all on the next one.